us for our hot topic in healthcare with cultural humility, a critical strategies in turbulent times. My name is Carrie Ann Bians. I'll introduce myself further in one more slide, but before we begin, I just wanted to do a few housekeeping items. This presentation is being recorded, so if you miss a portion or would like to share it with a friend or colleague, this will be coming to your inbox tomorrow morning. If you have any questions at all during the presentation or have feedback, please feel free to type it into the empty questions box on the bottom right corner of the screen, and we will have ample time at the end to answer your questions. A little bit about myself. My name is Karen Bians. I'm the Associate Director of Graduate Admissions here at BayPath, and I am happy to help facilitate.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lydia Sly. I am a graduate assistant for the Doctor of Health Science program. I'm in my second year. And I would like to introduce everyone to our hot topic tonight for cultural humility, critical strategies in turbulent times. And our esteemed guest speaker is Dr. Vanessa Martinez. Dr. Martinez is an accomplished anthropologist and educator specializing in community engagement, culturally responsive pediology, and health equity. She serves as the Director of Operations for the Women of Color Health Equity Collective, leading advocacy and research projects focused on the experiences of women of color. During this presentation, please feel free to use the chat feature to submit your questions as we go along. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our presenter, Dr. Vanessa Martinez.
Hi, everybody. As they mentioned, I am going to be talking to you a little bit about cultural humility tonight. This is the beginnings, really, of a training workshop and class that class workshop that I've given in a variety of different settings with healthcare professionals and educational settings, and in my own classes on cultural anthropology and my health equity class that I teach every fall. So I would like this process. I know that that this is, a virtual presentation, but I'm wondering if we can try to still make this as organic and interactive as possible. I know it sounds bizarre to make this interactive in a virtual presentation, but I'm wondering if you can just have a piece of paper and a pen or your laptop or digital device near you, just because there will be some activities that I'd like you to work on as I go through the presentation. Okay. So this presentation really stems from a larger conversation that Doctors Marie Garcia and Dr. Turbulent have been having really since the 90s. And it was this shift from cultural competency to cultural humility that I'd like to talk to you tonight about. So there are 4 elements in cultural humility that I'm going to get into more specifically throughout the session tonight. But cultural humility is more than just a tool. It's a philosophy, it's a process, it's a journey that plays a critical role in the pursuit of racial justice and anti-oppression work. We start with the fundamental belief that racism exists, and from there we embrace the core principles of cultural humility, which are rooted in 3 key aspects of racial and social justice work: self-reflection and lifelong learning, building meaningful relationships, and holding institutions accountable. The values and work of the Women of Color Health Equity Collective are deeply rooted in cultural humility. We approach our mission with a commitment to self-reflect and be lifelong learners, foster genuine relationships in community, and hold institutions accountable and build capacity within them. Cultural humility guides us to acknowledge the diverse perspectives and experiences of individuals and communities, recognizing that our understanding is always evolving. It encourages us to be open, respectful, empathetic, ensuring that our work promotes inclusivity, equity, and social justice. My journey, along with other executive team members of the collective and our friends and allies, we embarked on a mission to share this concept and integrate it into our work. Our journey began with training from colleagues of Drs. Turbulent and Marie Garcia right here in Massachusetts. We maintain regular contact with them, benefiting from their mentorship as we continue to learn and grow. This relationship has proven incredibly fruitful in conducting our trainings with integrity and building our organization as part of a larger community of trained individuals across the country. So the roadmap for our hour together is to establish a baseline of understanding what is cultural humility, the difference between and the growth out of competency, the difference between humility and competency, the tenets with some activities. I know it's going to be a little bit odd as a presentation, but I find that doing the activities can be really helpful. And part of cultural humility really is practicing those tenets. And then I'll share a little bit about what a full workshop would look like and take any questions that you might have. So some shared understandings. Normally in a training, I would, we might build this out. I do that even in my classes at the beginning of the semester when I'm teaching, is build out some community norms, community agreements, shared understandings. But we'll start here. It's a presentation. I think these are some good ones that tend to come up in some capacity. There are always more questions than answers. I am on the journey with you and often feel like I learn from you as well. We cannot be articulate all of the time. This is an ongoing learning process. We're equals, peers in this learning space. Our values, cultural identities, and past experiences matter. Conflict is always possible, and conflict is okay and can be transformational. There's no change without discomfort. We are all prejudiced. Prejudice is learned and can be unlearned, and we are perfectly imperfect. Before we dive into today's session, let's pause and take a moment to reflect on the land we call home. We all come from various places, and it's essential to recognize the ancestral homelands and traditional territories of Indigenous peoples who have been stewards of these lands since time immemorial. We must continually strengthen our solidarity and kinship with Native communities across the Americas and around the world. It's crucial to understand that land acknowledgements aren't confined to the past or historical contexts. Colonialism is an ongoing process that persists today. We need to be mindful of our present participation in the system and be active allies to our local Native communities. Our collective is based in Western Mass, and we want to pay our respects to the Pocumtuck, Nonotuck, Mohawk, Nipmuc, and Mohican nations who first inhabited this land before it was taken by European settlers. As I speak to you today, I sit on Nipmuc, Nonotuck, and Potomac land in Holyoke. I acknowledge the surviving local Native nations, which include the Nipmuc and the Wampanoag, the Mohican, the Pequot, and the Abenaki. I do this acknowledgement because I firmly believe that my liberation is intricately tied to that of my Native sisters and brothers. I've made a commitment to take what I learn, not just from yesterday or today, but also from tomorrow, and incorporate it into my life, turning my words into actions. I extend an invitation to each of you to join me on this journey. On your screen, you can see, I don't know if any of you have gone to native-land.ca, but it's a really cool resource to learn a little bit more about the Indigenous land. So for example, I'm originally from San Sebastián de Pepino, Puerto Rico, and I know that the Taino, the Arawak, Indigenous tribes are native from that land. And so actually one of my goals as I continue to do this work is to learn a little bit more about the Indigenous communities from my homeland of Puerto Rico as well. Okay. Let's take a moment to reflect on the origins of our families. And I'm going to share some questions with you. Some of these questions, normally what I would do in a training is I would share out the questions and then you would go into breakout rooms, or you would get into small groups to talk a little bit about your family's experience. So right now, since we don't have that opportunity, what I would like you to do is just to listen to my questions and to really just take a moment to think about them. What is your own family's migration story? How much do you know about it? Why do you know so much or so little? How has your own family's story been impacted by the way they were treated upon arrival? Good, bad, indifferent? How long has your family been in the United States? How does your family identify in relationship to being American? In an interactive training, these questions would provide another opportunity to discuss with your peers. Typical discussions would focus on the similar and different ways that individuals' families came to this country. Things like Indigenous legacy of being here, capture and movement of enslaved people, crossing borders over deserts, in ships as indentured servants, and so much more. It's crucial to recognize that everyone on this land didn't arrive here in the same way, and this diversity is reflected in their experiences in this country. Some of our ancestors were forced into chattel slavery, some were sent as a form of punishment, while others came because survival in their home countries was challenging. Some sought a better life, and regardless of how they came to be here, the contributions of people from all corners of the world must be acknowledged and celebrated, rather than relegated to mere footnotes in history. This is particularly important after celebrating the recent holiday last week, where children are often given incomplete information about the experience of pilgrims and Indigenous communities in schools. Our collective history is a tapestry woven from countless threads, each with its unique story and significance. It's a testament to the rich diversity and resilience of the human spirit. By recognizing and honoring these varied journeys, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complex tapestry of our shared history and the unique experiences that have shaped our society. So I think I mentioned earlier that I'm an anthropologist. And one of the things that you probably know about anthropology, or if not, I'm going to tell you, is that anthropology is the study of humanity as a whole. And so often culture is one of the buzzwords that gets used a lot when you hear someone say they're an anthropologist or a student takes an anthropology class. It's a lot about culture. So one of the things that we really enjoy using is the slide that was adapted from Drs. Turbulent and Murray Garcia. That is a piece by Octavio Paz about culture. So it was translated by Rachel Phillips Balash, and I'm going to read it to you. And I want you to just close your eyes and think about what moves you. What is culture? Culture is a society's style. It's way of living and dying. It embraces the erotic and the culinary arts, dancing and burial, courtesy and curses, work and leisure, rituals and festivals, punishments and rewards, dealing with the dead and the ghosts who people our dreams, attitudes towards women, children, old people and strangers, enemies and allies, eternity and the present, the here and the now and the beyond. So normally in a training, we would talk a little bit about what elements speak to people. And often the things that really resonate with people are the things that maybe we don't talk about as much related to culture. So this idea of ghosts who people are dreams, right? The importance of the people who have come before, or the information that our dreams might tell us. People sometimes really like the concept of here and now and the beyond. So beyond, you know, in the present and the future, but also potentially thinking about the past. Often the other pieces that resonate is sort of this attitudes towards different groups, right? Thinking about what is culture, and the links between different groups of people. So what I would like you to do now, remember that I asked you to maybe keep a piece of paper and a pen or digital something, your phone near you. I want to have you practice one of the elements that we share in this training traditionally. I'm going to show you an example using myself first, and then I'm going to ask you to silently just take a minute or two to do your own before we continue, okay? I am from una isla del encanto, un pueblo, San Sebastián de Pepino. I am from a strong lineage of women of color who made the world a better place by doing good in their communities. I am from education is the great equalizer and leave things better than you found them. I am from taking on too much and slowly learning to say no. I am from motherhood at a later age and surviving postpartum. I am from being a community college professor and a nonprofit leader. I am from family photos, Nochebuena, pernil con cuerito, la música del coquí, community and equity. I am from me. So now I just want to give you a minute or two to create your own I am from mini poem. So normally we would have our participants take a few minutes and then they would share out. We don't have the opportunity to share out, but I always like to offer time for people to practice these ideas because it will resonate further for them. And I have found that a lot of people really enjoy this, even if they feel like they are not creative. And these are some of the potential things you can use, and you probably could see that I did use some of these, right? So the only rule is that each line should start with the words I am from. So I just want to give you a minute or two to write just a few lines. Remember, the poem doesn't have to rhyme. There are no strict rules. It's all about creative self-expression. It's an opportunity to be your unique self. Okay, so you likely included some elements about culture in your poem. And we got to hear how Octavio Paz thinks about culture, but I also wanted to share an anthropological definition about culture. And you'll see that there are many things in common that this definition, the anthropological definition, shares with the piece by Octavio Paz and also likely with your poems. Culture refers to integrated patterns of human behavior that include the language, thoughts, communications, actions, customs, beliefs, values, and institutions of racial, ethnic, religious, or social groups. When I teach about culture, I often use this, I call it my cheat sheet definition of culture. And actually, it wasn't mine. One of the professors that I had years ago, Dr. Krista Harper, actually was the one who shared it with me, and I share it with you. Culture is what people make. Culture is what people think and feel. And culture is what people do. So we're talking about behaviors, we're talking about beliefs, we're talking about a language and religion and values and the stuff people leave behind, material culture. So now let's start talking a little bit more about the concrete elements that make up culture humility, its story, and I want to begin with a short video, about 7 minutes of a 30-minute documentary. If you have at all done any work on cultural humility, read anything about it, you may have come across this 30-minute documentary. I do recommend it. I will talk a little bit about the changes made to the tenants post the documentary, but you'll get at least a piece of the video and the elements of the video. And there's some really good material that I want to make sure that we get a chance to talk about. I can't hear it.
Doesn't do it justice, but the word that I think of it that is
Are other people having difficulties?
quality and
Yeah, I think the sound is coming in and out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to have it, but if you want to throw it in the chat for other people to be able to look at later, I can talk a little bit about it, and that's okay too. At this point, you know, after the internet going down at my work, I'm all set. Like, I will make it all work. It's totally fine. Okay, so we're not going to get a chance to watch the video, but you will have access to it. It is included in the notes that you'll get, or the PowerPoint that you'll get. So I'll just share a little bit about it. So what you get a chance in this documentary to learn directly from Drs. Turbulent and Marie Garcia, which is pretty awesome. That is actually Dr. Marie Garcia on screen right now. And they talk a lot about cultural humility as they tell a little bit about their story, and they ask other people to think about what cultural humility means to them. And so people sort of share a little bit about what the concept of cultural humility means to them. And then you sort of learn a little bit more about the tenets. And it's an opportunity to think through why it is that in the video they talk about 3 tenets, and actually I'm going to talk to you about 4, and so we'll talk about that shift as well. Okay, so one of the biggest things about cultural humility is that it is about a commitment, an active engagement in sort of this lifelong learning process that says we never reach an end point in the learning. There's always more to learn, which I think for most of us makes sense, but also can be a bit scary. When exploring the concept of cultural humility through various search engines, it becomes evident that there's a multitude of definitions reflecting its nuanced nature. Leland Brown's quote succinctly encapsulates the essence of cultural humility, notably the emphasis on the the absence of a discrete endpoint. This idea of the absence of a discrete endpoint is crucial. It underscores the realization that becoming experts in cultural humility is not the way to think about it. And instead, cultural humility is an ongoing process rather than an immediate achievement. This concept necessitates active engagement, implying that understanding and fostering cultural humility requires proactive involvement rather than a passive expectation for things to unfold around us. Instead, we must actively contribute to shaping these experiences. So there are now four tenets of cultural humility. We've been talking quite a bit about the first one, lifelong process of critical self-reflection and self-critique. The second is about redressing the power imbalances in the patient-provider or patient-client, client professional relationship, developing mutually beneficial partnerships with community on behalf of individuals and defined groups, and advocating and maintaining institutional accountability that parallels the three principles above. Sometimes people get really nervous about institutional accountability. So you can also think of it as institutional capacity building, as one of my colleagues said to me one day, well, you say accountability and people get, wibbly, their legs start getting wibbly wobbly. But if you say capacity building, right, everyone needs capacity building at any time. So it feels more comfortable. In the video, the documentary that was done, it mentions three tenets, but subsequently the second tenet about beneficial relationships was divided into two, thus resulting in four tenets. So many of us have heard of cultural competence more than cultural humility. So what's the difference? Well, cultural competency has a longer history. It's important to recognize the influential work of Terry L. Cross and colleagues in 1989, as well as Paul Pedersen in their cultural competency efforts. Their contributions prompted critical reflections on inherent ethnocentrism across various domains, such as medicine, education, politics. Cultural humility builds upon this groundwork, but introduces the idea that mastery of other people's cultures and lives is not attainable. Instead, it emphasizes the importance of humility, imposing essential questions and genuinely listening to others. This approach facilitates more meaningful engagement and relationship building. I want to bring your attention to a few of these differences. Flexibility versus rigidity. Cultural humility allows individuals to approach cultural differences with openness, curiosity, and a willingness to learn, fostering adaptability and growth. In contrast, rigidity in cultural competence may lead to fixed assumptions or behaviors based on one's perceived level of knowledge or expertise, potentially hindering effective communication and understanding across cultural contexts. Cultural humility emphasizes a lifelong commitment to self-reflection, openness, and a willingness to learn from others, recognizing that one's understanding of culture is always evolving. Its path to equity prioritizes building respectful, reciprocal relationships with individuals and communities, challenging power imbalances, and actively engaging in critical self-assessment and institutional change. In contrast, cultural competence often focuses on acquiring specific knowledge or skills related to different cultures without necessarily questioning underlying power dynamics. This approach can inadvertently perpetuate existing social hierarchies and reinforce the status quo by treating cultural differences as static and separate from broader systems of inequality. So we've already gotten a chance, little bit of a chance, to practice the first tenet of cultural humility, which is all about critical self-reflection and lifelong learning. Using the I Am From poem and the discussion about family migration, we start critical self-reflection practice when we train our community on cultural humility. So why do we want critical self-reflection and lifelong learning? Well, because we need to know ourselves, and we need to know what we bring into the interaction. What about our story? What about our lives? What about our culture? What about who we are, right? What do we bring into every interaction that we have? In what ways are you bringing your identity, power, and privilege to the work that you do? As a professor, as a nurse, as a teacher, as a human, right? Whether you're working in a factory or you're working with young children, in some capacity, childcare worker, right? You're working in IT. In what ways are you bringing your identity, your power, or lack thereof, your privilege to the work that you're doing every day? It's important to think about these things as we, especially given where we are and some of the challenges that we're seeing in the world today. So this is another activity that we would often do, looking at this power wheel. And we would ask our participants to think about bias, right? So depending on who we are in the room with, whether it's students, whether it's faculty, whether it's Bay State healthcare professionals or a nonprofit, we would ask them to think about what impact their own not knowing their biases might have on the populations that they're working with, right? And how do we know? So this activity asks you to choose 3 identities that define you. Think about why they're important to you and how these identities might influence your personal and professional life. If I look and I think about my own, some elements for myself, right? I am, my first language is actually Spanish, but all of my schooling after first grade was in English. So in most cases, I am non-accented, unlike my dad, who has an accent. I am light-skinned. So even though I am Latina, I can pass if I so choose. But I am large, I guess I would be identified as large body sized, considered fat or plus size, depending on how you think about it. And so all of these pieces, right, give me different power or positions in the world, and those things those things do impact my perspective and how I think about things in the world. And so I think about, like, as a teacher, for example, as a professor, my teaching has changed a lot over time, right? Because I have over time really thought about power and privilege, and thought about how to make my classroom more student-centered and more aware of these different dynamics that are playing out outside of my classroom, but also inside my classroom. So who I am as a teacher has changed profoundly in the last 20 years, for example, right? And that's partially because I now better understand my biases, my power, my positionality as a professor, for example. So the second tenet, redressing the power imbalances in the patient-provider dynamic or client-provider, there's a variety of ways to sort of think about that dyad teacher-student dynamic. So one of the opportunities in this section is to really think about different terminology. So we do have a terminology sheet that we give out often for the larger training that we do. And we talk a lot about these different terms that, sometimes you might see in newspapers or, in everyday language. And some of the terms are not necessarily used correctly, and some of the terms are not explained very fully. So when we talk about power, we're actually talking about access to resources that enhances a person's chances of getting what they need in order to lead a comfortable, productive life. And so when we think about power, power is unequally distributed globally. And in US society, some individuals and groups wield greater power than others, thereby allowing them greater access and control over resources. Wealth, race, whiteness, citizenship, patriarchy, heterosexism, and education are a few key social mechanisms through which power operates. Although power is often conceptualized as power over other individuals or groups, other variations on the definition of power include things like power with, used in the context of building collective strength within social groups, and power within, which really is about referencing an individual's internal strength. Another term that becomes really important in this second tenet is the concept of privilege, this unearned social power given by the formal and informal institutions of society to all members of a dominant group, whether they want it or not. Often privilege remains unseen by those who possess it, mainly because we're taught not to recognize it. Nevertheless, it bestows an inherent advantage upon those who have it compared to those who don't. Having privilege doesn't imply that you haven't worked hard for your accomplishments. Instead, it means that there are areas in your life where opportunities are more readily available, even if you put in hard work. For instance, my parents worked diligently to eventually own a home. Because of that, they were able to lend me some money to be able to get my own home in the last 5 years, right? And that means that my 7-year-old hasn't had to work, hasn't had to worry, right? What she knows is our family has a house. It's a small house, but we have a house, and that benefits her, right? And she's never experienced the uncertainty of housing instability because of that. That privilege doesn't negate personal effort. It simply acknowledges the unequal starting points and opportunities in life. So this is one of those moments to reflect. Normally in a training, we would give a scenario about power and privilege in an educational setting or a hospital, in the government, or a nonprofit setting, all depending on who's in the room. The goal would be to have participants discuss in small groups and then in a large group different ways to address the particular scenario, and even complications with trying to address scenarios depending on the level of power you have in an organization. So just think about it. How does power and privilege play out in your job and or the areas you spend lots of time in? The third tenet of cultural humility, developing mutually beneficial partnerships with community on behalf of individuals and defined populations. One of the things that we do in this section is we talk a lot about building relationships. What does it take? Let's consider this question. I want you to think of your closest friend. This activity would normally ask you to think about, the first encounter, right? How you met this person. So like one of my best friends, Christina, I actually met her in a class. How did we establish becoming friends? I actually don't remember. I mean, we were in that class together and we just started talking one day. And I don't know, we just sort of clicked. Sounds so generic, but it did. Then we would ask you to think about those some experiences with that person that made the relationship significant, right? So one of the moments that made our relationship really significant was I needed to move in. I was experiencing some financial stress, and I actually asked to move in to her house to rent a room in her house to save money. And that was either going to make or break our friendship, and it actually strengthened it, right? The second experience was she got pregnant and needed the room for her baby. And so then I had to find a new place to live. And again, another moment where the relationship, it could have gone either way, right? But it just strengthened it. And then I became a titi to her first, or well, all her babies, but to August. So why and how is this person your closest friend? I know you're probably wondering why we're even talking about this, but I'm getting there. So we start with the concept of building relationships because we want to talk about what happens in different types of relationships that can cause some real harm, but that might seem really small at first, right? And so what is a way that we harm relationships? Well, there are a lot of topics that can be covered in this section. Today, we're going to cover the knowledge and skill sets about repairing and rebuilding relationships, because it isn't just our friendships where we need to do that, but we need to be able to do that in our working relationships as well. And so this tenet in particular, the concept of microaggressions is really a powerful thing in this section to really think about this tenet of mutually beneficial relationships and thinking about repairing the harm. We would normally spend a little bit of time talking about the ways that we often show up in relationships with others, in particular those who identify with a marginalized group. And so microaggressions, we use a video to talk about microaggressions as well. These seemingly small but become really, really massive over time because you're not just getting them infrequently, but they're actually everyday, regular things. So everyday verbal, nonverbal, environmental slights, snubs, insults, whether intentional or unintentional, they communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative messages to target people based on their marginalized group membership. This is a really great, another really great resource. This short video on microaggressions, how microaggressions are like mosquito bites. So this video allows people to sort of see how something that might seem small to you if you don't experience them becomes really, really big to people who experience them regularly, but that also some microaggressions might seem small, but they have a large impact both emotionally or physically on different populations, depending on sort of the frequency, but also the potential harm that they can cause. In the fourth tenet, which actually like I mentioned before, the fourth tenet is really about ensuring that whatever institution you're a part of, that it models the first three tenets, that there is critical self-reflection, that there is a mitigating or redressing power imbalances, and that the organization is willing to and working to develop mutually beneficial partnerships with community. And so what does that look like and how do we talk about it? So we often talk in this section about, and again, it's all about sort of practicing and thinking about, what does this look like at the institutional level? Like what are the hiring practices? What are the policies? Who's making decisions? How are they making decisions? Is there a process for grievances, right? What does that process look like? Do people know about it, right? So all of those policies, procedures, actions, and thinking through whether those are modeling those first three tenets. Starting with hiring practices is often a good one to start with. Search committees, just job descriptions, all of those pieces. So when we think about reflecting on our institutions, understanding the history of an organization or institution is paramount to gaining a clear, comprehensive comprehension of its current status in terms of policies, practices, clienteles, employees, and its relationship with the broader community. It involves a thorough consideration of how the organization perpetuates harm to specific populations. This exploration aims to instill a sense of purpose and shared goals within the organization. To achieve a comprehensive understanding, it's essential to delve into the challenges the organization has overcome and the journey that has brought it to its current state. This process serves as an opportunity for a profound re-examination of the organization's work and the trajectory it is headed towards. By carefully assessing its historical roots and impact, the organization can refine its direction, fostering a more conscientious and impactful approach to its mission and role within the community. So as I mentioned before, we have, this is just a short presentation for you all, a little bit about who we are and how cultural humility might be beneficial given sort of the trajectory of our country and our world. You know, and one of the things to think about is that the full workshop really provides this historical context, a shared language, and practice of the 4 tenets, and thinking about sort of how to do some of this work together. It allows an opportunity for people to talk, for people to share, and for relationships to be built more strongly. So I will just end here and say there's this quote by Audre Lorde that really, you know, allows us to really think about the importance of cultural humility. We can learn to work and speak when we are afraid in the same way we have learned to work and speak when we are tired. For we have been socialized to respect fear more than our own needs for language and definition. And while we wait for that final luxury of fearlessness, the weight of that silence will choke us. The fact that we are here and that I speak these words in an attempt to break that silence and bridge some of these differences between us, for it is not difference which immobilizes us, but silence. And there are so many silences to be broken. I think that really encapsulates both the work that we're trying to do at the collective with cultural humility and our communities, but also the importance of action and breaking our silence. So I will end there and take any questions that people might have. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez. Let's see, I have the question. I'm not seeing any come through at this moment. However, in the next slide is going to be our contact information. So if you have any questions or feedback regarding this presentation, please feel free. Here it is now. Again, this will be coming to your inbox as well, but if you have any questions regarding our graduate programs, please reach out to me or Dr. Watson, and if you feel free to reach out to Dr. Martinez.
Yes, I love hearing from people. So please do. If people have questions or would like more information about the work that we're doing, I will happily share.
Great. And thank you so much for presenting for us this evening, Dr. Martinez. And we hope to see everyone at future events, and have a great week.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Carrie Ann and Lydia. I really appreciate your assistance tonight as well.
Thank you so much.